Thank you everyone for being here today. The topic of the conversation is the ROI of supporting inclusive entrepreneurship. This conversation is really targeted for individuals who work at social impact organizations. So either corporates that have CSR departments that are, really motivated for social impact, maybe foundations that do or do not yet support entrepreneurs. And then I even saw in some of the registrants, people that are ESOs, like Bridge for Billions, people that support entrepreneurs themselves. So I think it's going to be a really rich conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So to introduce myself before we get into this, I'm Andrea Carron. I am the Business Development Director for the North America region at Bridge for Billions. I've been at Bridge now for about 4 years and have always been within the business development team. So what that means for us is basically looking for new partners around the world to do incubation programs with, whether it's one incubation program or many. I'll share some more at the end about who Bridge is. I didn't want that to be the main focus for today. But yeah, that's what I do, right? Is I design incubation programs around the world with our partners, mainly focused with US partners, but for entrepreneurs and programs around the world. And I work very closely with our impact measurement team, right? Because we're constantly looking at whether our programs are having success, and also talking about constantly what success means to us. So that's really the bulk of the conversation today, is what is success when you support entrepreneurs. And I'm excited, in about 25-30 minutes, I'll be introducing Mallory, who's here from Andy, from the Aspen Institute, who will be answering some questions, because I thought, no one wants to listen to one person talk for so long, and to bring in an expert would be interesting. So Mallory, I'm looking forward to that. Cool. Okay, so let's get started. Today, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about social impact from your organization in general. So I know probably most of you here know about theory of change, and how to make an impact plan, but I'm going to go over that quickly before we move on to the next 3 points, which is essentially how to, or I guess what benefits, come from supporting entrepreneurs as a part of your impact plan, and then ways you can do it and ways you can measure it. So by the end of the next 30 minutes or so, I want to get into, the details of how you can measure the benefits of supporting entrepreneurs, because there are the very common ways to do it, but then there are many more ways that we can be doing that. So to begin, as I mentioned, I do want to talk about social impact plan in general. So many of you work at organizations that need a social impact plan, right? You need to make a lot of decisions on how you're going to use your social impact budget, right? So before we even start talking about supporting entrepreneurs, I wanted to start here and I'll kind of be talking from the same baseline. And what I mean by this is how to make a plan for your social return or your impact. So you're going to spend X amount of dollars and spend X amount of resources on specific social impact initiatives. How do you choose which initiatives to do that on, right? So what we use at Bridge for Billions is a methodology called the theory of change. So many of you are probably very familiar with this again, but just to kind of reiterate, so we're all on the same page here. Theory of change, it's essentially a methodology for planning, for measuring, for adapting and evaluating how you as an organization promote social change. So the theory of change defines your long-term goal. So what you want to reach, what impact you want to reach. And then mapping backwards, you identify how you'll get there. Okay, so I love this image because it kind of hits close to home. I'm sure we've all been in this situation where with your team, you've thought of, okay, where you want to go, and everyone starts saying, okay, well, we need to cross the river, so let's just build a bridge. And everyone puts their stones and their rocks together, maybe some sticks, and you get to a point where you finally put your head up and you realize, wait, wasn't the most effective or efficient way of doing this. We're not working together. This bridge isn't going to make it to where we want to go. Maybe we should have built a boat instead, right? So this is the whole idea of a theory of change is, okay, we see where we're going to go, but the idea of making a plan and being able to measure and adapt that plan along the way is extremely important to get to your impact initiative or goal, sorry. So essentially a theory of change, what it is it's your dashboard. Without a theory of change, it'd be like a pilot, not having a flight plan, and not being able to measure, and see their indicators along the way, whether the weather is okay, whether there's enough gas, etc. It would be, trying to go to your end destination blindly. So this is very top level, right? But when we talk about theory of change, first you need to establish that impact goal, that lofty goal, the change you want to see happen. And that's first, right? This is typically long-term, a few years out. And then you need to work backwards to see how exactly this is going to happen. So what you would do next is, what outcomes do you want to see? What are the changes that are going to happen in order to get to that impact goal, right? And if you're going to be if changes will be happening, what are the outputs, the outputs, what is the evidence that is going to take place in order to see those outcomes come to life? And then lastly, thinking, okay, what are the activities and the inputs that me and my team need to do to get these outputs that will result in the outcomes that will lead to the long-term impact? So you can look this up. I mean, theory of change, there's a lot, it goes in a bit deeper than this, right? Because something else that's super important is once you map this out, it's very important to, for example, name all of your indicators. So name what exactly you're going to be measuring throughout. So what are the inputs? What are the outputs? Really list them out, and then make sure you understand how you're going to be measuring all of these things and how you're going to verify and prove that this is happening. Are there ways within your social impact plan that you can, measure your outputs and prove that you're actually creating the output or the outcome that your indicator is stating? So this sounds very theoretical. And if you haven't heard of theory of change before, I really, I'm not going to continue talking about this too much today. I just wanted to establish the importance of, before you even decide on, supporting entrepreneurs or, think about how you're going to measure supporting entrepreneurs, it's really important to even think about, okay, what's the end goal? What's the impact plan? And I'm going to be referring to this throughout, the next 20 minutes or so. And I did want to give this concrete example before we move forward, but this is the Bridge for Billions theory of change, just as an example, kind of a snapshot here of what we look at. So you can see, as a team, we decided a while ago what our goal is. What is our impact goal in the world, right? And you can see this is a long-term, lofty goal, but we want inclusive, equitable, and efficient entrepreneurship ecosystems that increase the viability of early stage ventures and promote innovative solutions for all. So that's the big goal we are constantly trying to get to. And what we're doing along the way, what my role in Bridge is, and all of that of my colleagues, our projects, our programs, etc., come from this theory of change, right? The outcomes, for example, the first outcome here is that entrepreneurs launch their businesses after completing the program. That would be one outcome, right? But what outputs need to happen? What do we try and get to for that outcome? Well, one example could be that the visual business plan is created and validated by all, by the entrepreneurs that go through our program. And what needs to happen, the input before that, is that the entrepreneurs work on the 8 business tools, among a lot of other things, right? But I did want to give kind of a tangible example here before we move forward. So if there's questions about theory of change, please, you can put them in the chat. Maybe we can get to them afterwards, or I'll keep an eye out here, but I'm going to continue going if I don't see questions in the chat right now. So, okay, let's say that you've done your theory of change, you have, this impact plan created, and that supporting entrepreneurs a part of it, which I'm assuming it is, or you want it to be if you're here. So we're going to go into that. Before we go into how you can measure supporting entrepreneurs, because that's a huge part of the return of the return on supporting entrepreneurs, it's the benefits that you'll get from it as an organization. These benefits are important to identify because this is going to help you understand, the impacts that can be created externally, externally in the world, the entrepreneurs, the mentors that involved, the externally versus internally in your organization, there's also huge benefits when we're talking about supporting entrepreneurs. And I wanted to talk about this today because I think a lot of organizations don't really tend to see mainly and focus on the external benefits, which are huge. But let's dive into this. So I do want to state that on this call, there's a mix of, as I mentioned in the beginning, social responsibility leaders from more corporate CSR, but then there's also foundation leaders that I see on the call that are not only focusing on entrepreneurship, but maybe other social impact initiatives as well. And then there's even people that support entrepreneurs themselves. So I made this a little bit broad and universal, so maybe all of these benefits won't pertain to everyone on this call, but I think that everyone will find things that do pertain to their organization. So I've grouped them into 4 big kind of benefit categories, right? So the first is social impact. This is more of that external benefit that I was talking about earlier. So, job creation and economic prosperity. If you're supporting entrepreneurs, you're also supporting them to create innovations that solve problems that really truly matter in the world. So it's the impact generated by these entrepreneurs. And of course, the entrepreneurs themselves, their livelihood, their well-being is greatly impacted by these programs. And then there's DEI, right? So diversity, equity, and inclusion is another huge benefit here. If you're an organization, especially a corporation that has maybe internal stakeholders like your employees, to be able to influence your internal stakeholders or your employees and really challenge their societal biases, they can be, mentors to a diverse group of entrepreneurs and learn this firsthand, right? Supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs is also a huge way to support DEI and work towards an economic equity. Third is innovation and marketing. So this has a lot to do with organizations that really want to be known in the space of innovation and really figure out kind of, innovation trends. So working with these early stage entrepreneurs can identify trends in your sector. So you'll be working with young or innovative individuals that are really at the forefront of your sector and know kind of what's coming. So it's a great kind of innovation or research activity. But also you're generating that network of those individuals that are doing all of that innovation. And then lastly, positioning your brand within the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem globally, by supporting a group of entrepreneurs has huge benefits as well. And then lastly, this mainly pertains to corporates, but huge benefits in HR. So if you are incorporating your employees as mentors to the entrepreneurs in a program, you'll be able to break these silos, right? So in one of the programs we did in Bridge, we've put 2 different mentors assigned to one entrepreneur to support them through the program. And these 2 mentors were actually employees of the partner company that came from different departments, different offices, and they had to break those silos. They worked together, they got to know each other, and it was really impactful to see that personal and professional development of those individuals throughout the process of mentoring an entrepreneur. And then to foster their entrepreneurial mindsets while they're going through these programs and in direct touch with an entrepreneur, they're learning firsthand on the go about how to think, with agility, creativity, and kind of get in the shoes and mind of an entrepreneur. And through all of this, we've seen that the employees that act as mentors really find a huge new sense of purpose in what they're doing, with their company and even personally as well. And it's just really satisfying. So I bring this up because as an organization that's focusing on social impact, and especially supporting entrepreneurs, you can get a lot of these benefits through a lot of different types of entrepreneurship support, right? So Bridge for Billions, we do incubation, but and these are the benefits we see of doing of supporting on incubation, but there's so many other things that you can now do, which is amazing to have a lot of choices when you want to support entrepreneurs, but it's also daunting, right? And that's what I kind of wanted to break down today and hopefully clear that up and have it not be so daunting. So you can see, if you want to create jobs and promote economic prosperity over here in the social impact, you can do that in many ways. You can fund and support boot camps for earlier stage entrepreneurs. You can work, support mentors. You can just do employee mentorship programs. You can do microfinancing programs. For DEI purposes, there's tons of DEI trainings you can do with your employees or your internal stakeholders, peer mentoring. For innovation, there's, M&A and entrepreneurship or corporate venturing. And for human resources, for HR, there's, more traditional employee engagements like volunteering. You can give your employees a stipend for their passion projects. There's a lot of things that you can do, but the amazing thing is that if you do support entrepreneurs in a comprehensive incubation program, there's a lot of benefits that you can get in at once. So let's start talking about the how you can measure this success. So there's a lot of ways that you can measure social impact by supporting entrepreneurs, diversity, equity, and inclusion, innovation, HR. I'm not going to go into every single one of these metrics right now because I'm going to touch on them throughout. And Mallory will definitely give us her opinion on some of these later. But you can see that there's not just the standard, financial metrics that you think of when you say, okay, we're going to be supporting entrepreneurs. Let's, talk about the jobs they create, the revenue that they gain, and how much investment, they can attract. Those are some of the most popular metrics, but you can see here that there's so much more. It can be so much more rich in terms of the impact that you generate and that you measure by supporting entrepreneurs, again, internally and externally, that, we'll continue to go over as a part of this talk today. And I can definitely send out this deck so each of you have, these bullet points in your inbox. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about the importance of having your impact dashboard, right? Like the general direction you want to go. Then we've talked about, okay, you've identified entrepreneurs being a really vital part of that social impact plan because of a lot of these metrics and benefits that we've talked about, many that you probably already know of, maybe hopefully starting to get some new light bulbs of other benefits that you can hopefully, gain by supporting entrepreneurs for your organization. But now it's a question of, okay, but how do I do it? What type of support? Because there is a lot of different types of support for entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of different ways that you can compare and make this decision. Okay, so I wanted to state that. And this is a graph that I made the other day as I was trying to figure out how I wanted to help, people think about the decision about how and how to support entrepreneurs in what vehicle, because Bridge for Billions, the incubation program that we run, is one type of vehicle, but there's a lot. So as you can see here, what I'm comparing is that there are some vehicles or programs or initiatives to support entrepreneurs that are more high touch, which is high involvement, a lot of personal attention to the entrepreneur. And then lower touch on this scale would be lower involvement, automation, maybe low customization, right? And then the other axis I want to compare it to is that some programming or initiatives have a lot of depth into one area of support. So maybe there's, entrepreneurs that really need support in just one, focus area, which there are a lot of programs that do focus. And then there's a lot of different initiatives in supporting entrepreneurs that are more broad. So there's lots of different topics. It's a varied program in content. Okay. And then the bubbles, the size of the bubbles is the size of the number of beneficiaries, right? And when I say that, it's the number of entrepreneurs that can be involved in a program at once, or how many maybe you can reach, per year, if we're thinking about it in terms of planning your social impact initiatives by, fiscal year or calendar year, what the size of the number of entrepreneurs you're going to support. And I'm being careful with my words here, because I don't want to say the size of your impact, because again, that's sometimes a way that people try and measure impact, is how many entrepreneurs can I support, which is fine. We measure that as well, but it's not the only thing we should focus on, not just trying to get numbers, it's also quality. So I wanted to explain some of these examples here, because there's definitely a lot of opinions out there about what's better, what's, not as great, but I think all have huge benefits, right? So let's talk about an ideation workshop, for example. So maybe your organization is interested in working with entrepreneurs at their very early stages, and you want to help them ideate new solutions to different problems that exist. Well, if you're really going to get into this one-on-one kind of work with the ideation, there might be a low number of entrepreneurs in that workshop. It could be very, very high touch if it's very personal, but the depth is not as much, right? Because you're really just helping them identify a problem in the market and what solutions could be. Now, moving over to the other end of the spectrum here, and we're talking about growth stage accelerators, which is probably the most common way to support entrepreneurs, what kind of rings at most bells for a lot of people. And that's, those programs that are very high touch. There's usually 7 to 10 entrepreneurs in a cohort. They already have, established startups. They have high potential for growth. The idea is to connect them with investment, and that's how impact could be measured here. So it's going to be lots of breadth. You're going to connect them to manufacturers or distributors, and maybe you're going to help them with finances and connect them to investors, et cetera. At Bridge for Billions, I put us here, which I think, in terms of breadth, because we're validating business models with these early stage entrepreneurs, we're going over a lot of topics with them. We've automated it or used technology in a way that it's high touch, but still lower here on the spectrum, so that we can reach a medium size of beneficiaries and impact more early stage entrepreneurs that way. So there's a lot on this slide. If you ever want to talk about it, and in my opinion on this, let me know. I would love to, because I think there are just a lot of options out there, which is wonderful, on how to support entrepreneurs. And it's really hard to decide sometimes on the best way for you, your organization, in accordance with your impact plan, your theory of change. And that's, not the only thing you have to decide. There's more decisions to be made, which is, on the type of entrepreneur. So there's a lot of different types of entrepreneurs that we can support in, you could do ideation workshops or a Bridge for Billions incubation program and support, different types of entrepreneurs. So first thing you need to think about is what type of business, right? And again, I'm going to connect it back to the theory of change, because when you're making these decisions, it should be aligned with that impact plan that you've already established with your team. It really should be a part of your organization's impact, idea, the plan, the direction that you've generated. So you can choose to support small businesses or high growth potential startups. There's a lot of impact to be generated in both of these types of businesses, and there's even businesses and types of entrepreneurs in between, right? The small businesses are those maybe mom and pop shops, or even businesses that aren't the mom and pop but don't have a huge, scalability to them, versus startups that you might identify as maybe it rings a bell as the next unicorns, or ones that will really, scale their growth exponentially. You can also make the decision on what stage of entrepreneur you want to support. Very early stage of just, the ideas, early stage, which is where we focus on Bridge for Billions, of really supporting entrepreneurs validate their business plans and their models. And then growth stage, when they are consolidated, they're organized, they have traction, et cetera. And what they need to do is really grow and accelerate and maybe expand geographies, et cetera. And then lastly, it's the entrepreneurial profile. You can maybe have decided that you want to support small businesses in an early stage, but maybe now you need to decide what sector they're going to be innovating in, or maybe they want to be, you want them to be from low socioeconomic backgrounds. There's a lot of decisions that you can make here, really depending on your theory of change and what type of entrepreneur you want to support to reach the impact you desire. So again, here, the common metrics to really measure the impact of your entrepreneurship support, most commonly are the number of entrepreneurs that, are supported, the revenue generated, jobs, their survival rate, and the investment that they go on to raise. But there are so many more. As I've mentioned before, you can measure the inclusivity of your program, how much they're really actually learning and coming out from, what their relationship with their mentor and their cohort is. Did they get access to the market? Were they engaged in the program? These are all things and so many more that you can measure to really understand the true impact of your entrepreneurship support. So before, I'm going to take a minute now, and I wanted to introduce Mallory. Mallory is going to kind of pop in here and help me talk about this, right? Because, I'm giving you my opinion, what we do at Bridge, and generally what I've learned in the ecosystem over the past 4 years. But I think Mallory St. Clair from Andy has a really interesting opinion. She is the impact manager at Andy, which is the Aspen Institute's program for development entrepreneurs. And yeah, we have some questions ready for you. If you want to unmute yourself, Mallory. I don't see you in the...
Do you see me? Sorry.
Yes, it's my issue because I hid people. Perfect. Okay, so Mallory, thank you for joining us. I don't know, did you want to maybe introduce yourself quickly? I probably missed some really important facts about you, and go into the questions.
Of course, yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Mallory St. Clair. I am the impact manager for the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, aka Andy. I actually see some of our members here on the call. Just really quickly, what Andy does is we're a member organization. So Bridge for Billions is our member. And we work around the world, specifically in emerging economies, to help support organizations that work with entrepreneurs and small and growing businesses. So essentially quite a lot of what the audience here is interested in working in. And I handle all of our internal monitoring and evaluation, but then also I talk with organizations such as Bridge for Billions, and we work to support the capacity development of the overall ecosystem in terms of impact measurement and management. So that is my area of specialization. And please give me any questions that you'd like. If you have a question and you don't want to lose it, put it in the chat and we can also get to it.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Mallory. I'm excited to hear some of your answers, and exciting to hear that you're seeing other Andy members on the call besides Bridge. That's always exciting to see the ecosystem coming together. So perfect. So we've prepared a few questions, and then just let everyone know after these 4 questions, I'll wrap up, and then we'll actually open the last 10-15 minutes of the webinar to other questions from the audience that can be either for myself and please for Mallory as well. And yeah, so I look forward to that. Okay, so to begin, Mallory, what are some of the important ways to measure successful entrepreneurship support? And then if you could tie in, how this could possibly translate to corporations or foundations that are supporting entrepreneurs, that would be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. So with anything, this is going to depend on your theory of change as an organization. For example, you will have defined what exactly is important to you in your organization for impact measurement. However, some of the most common and important ways of measuring that support includes things such as new investments received after the support has been given, revenue growth, profit growth, and then also job growth. So something that a lot of people are interested in is seeing job creation from their investees. So job growth is actually quite important. In addition, a lot of people go deeper. They measure job quality. They might measure the DEI makeup of the new jobs that are generated. So definitely kind of those three high level aspects are very important. But in addition, I strongly encourage people always to measure actual entrepreneurship capacity and knowledge. So this includes talking to entrepreneurs and taking a baseline and end line of their knowledge levels, their confidence levels, things such as their ability to give a pitch presentation in front of an investor. And you can measure these things both quantitatively and qualitatively. So right then, off the top of my head, definitely be looking at the financial results, but also the results themselves in the entrepreneur.
Love it. Thank you.
And then in terms of, corporations or foundations that are supporting entrepreneurs, a lot of these indicators are very common across the spectrum and across different organizations. I strongly suggest for corporates and foundations, if you do have a specific type of entrepreneur that you want to focus on, try and measure certain things that are specific to that entrepreneur. Like, for example, Andy's starting a new project where we are working with entrepreneurs in the kind of waste management circular economy ecosystem. And so, of course, we have specific indicators for entrepreneurs in that sector.
Great. Thank you. And feel free if anyone has any questions as they come up, please put them in the chat. But thanks, Mallory. That's extremely important. And I'm glad you mentioned some of those metrics that I didn't have on the slide prior to this, because as you mentioned, I think the financial impact, investment or revenue are extremely important, but some of that social impact as well in terms of learning is huge. So thanks. The next question we have is, what are your thoughts on inclusivity in this space, supporting underserved entrepreneurs, and how important is that for financial and social impact?
Yes, so we've done quite a lot of work at Andy around underserved entrepreneurs, mainly women entrepreneurs. So we know from our research that in general, women entrepreneurs, they have a harder time accessing finance, and they have a harder time receiving loans. This is due to a lot of different factors, including unconscious gender bias in the financing organizations, but also the fact that women entrepreneurs have unique needs. And so they have really benefited from specific targeted accelerator and incubator programs that have been developed for women entrepreneurs. So Andy did a grant-making fund to different organizations to investigate this. We were testing different types of accelerator and entrepreneur support models, specifically for women founders, women entrepreneurs. And we found that having modules and having content that was specific to their individual needs and experiences resulted in better outcomes in terms of revenue and in terms of investment access. So when I say kind of specific modules, I'm talking about, they had sessions where they talked about like how to confront or reduce unconscious bias in the investment process. They did a lot of work around finance and accounting, technical assistance, because that's kind of where a lot of the women entrepreneurs needed help. And the fact that that targeted curriculum was able to produce really good results is a testament to the fact that, yes, a lot of underserved entrepreneurs face unique challenges. And so they need certain unique course content to help deal with that. This is very important that we recognize this, because what we found is that when you don't make curriculums for folks who are underserved, they tend to not perform as well as they could. So for example, if you have an accelerator program with both men and women, but you don't have anything that kind of talks and addresses the specific challenges of a woman founder, that program will not be as impactful on the specific entrepreneurs. So if you do care about your financial and social impact, it is very necessary to measure and customize for some of these folks.
Thank you. That's extremely interesting. And out of curiosity, is Andy planning on doing more reports in the future with other underserved profiles? Like, it was women entrepreneurs this time, but will there be more reports in the future of other, backgrounds, profiles, etc.?
Yes. So right now we're launching a project around waste and circularity, and we will be testing different types of models for those businesses, which do frequently struggle with informality, especially in the waste sector. So that will be forthcoming, but we are going to experiment and iterate on that. Yeah.
Very cool. That's exciting. That will be interesting. Alrighty. And then, oh, I see. Okay.
Low-income entrepreneurs. Yes. So, sorry, I can address that if that's okay, Andrea.
Yeah.
So low-income entrepreneurs, a lot of the barriers for low-income entrepreneurs tend to revolve around collateral. So a lot of banks, especially in, say, emerging economies or other areas, they want pretty substantial collateral and guarantees in order to lend. So having low-income entrepreneurs, they will not have assets to back things up. They will not, if you guys use some type of credit scoring system, it will not, they tend to not do very well with the credit scoring system. So actually some accelerators have some pretty innovative things where they make like informal credit scores or like guarantees for lending, or they will actually talk and connect those low-income entrepreneurs with investors and with banks and act as a guarantor for that. So I think like one of the biggest issues is A, the lack of collateral to access finance. And then also B, a lot of entrepreneurs need a lot of technical assistance. So investment matchmaking and guaranteeing in place of collateral and specific technical assistance around things such as like finance and accounting and legal will be very impactful, I think.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Thanks for the question, David. It's good to see you. All right. So in your experience, Mallory, what type of programming leads to the most impacts for entrepreneurs? I know this sounds like a trick question, but yeah, would love to hear your thoughts and if you could explain that the type of program and the type of impact that was generated, that would be great.
Yes. So it of course, it kind of results on how you define impact. I know that's an annoying phrase, but it is kind of my little disclaimer right there. However, I believe that quite a lot of success that we've seen from programming and accelerators involves actually helping to facilitate the investment matchmaking process. So I believe for most accelerators and incubators, you kind of want to see them getting access to finance, like getting investors of different types. So we saw some interesting results when these accelerators and incubators actively sourced and cultivated the demand side, quote unquote, of financing, aka they were working directly with the investors and financiers. So those investors and financiers were very interested to invest in, say, like small businesses, startups, women-led businesses, but they did not know how to source their pipeline. They did not know how to do due diligence. So this particular organization I'm thinking of, they helped the entrepreneurs in one, sorry, they helped the investors in one part of their program. Then they had entrepreneurs in an incubator, and then they matched them up. So they cultivated that investment pipeline directly. They helped the enterprises get up to snuff in terms of their finances and their accounting practices. And then they did matchmaking. So then they actually help facilitate that introduction. So I think that organizations that work both on the supply side, aka getting enterprises ready for investment, and the demand side, aka helping investors cultivate that pipeline, very valuable, very, very, very effective is what we found.
Super interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
All right. So I don't see any comments in the chat yet. So we'll move on to number 4. What advice would you give to someone who wants to fund, or is funding, supporting entrepreneurship support in general?
My advice is honestly to try and look a little deeper at the impact. So we were talking a little bit earlier about very common indicators that are used, for example, jobs created, but you can go deeper. So you can measure the quality of a job. You can measure whether or not it's decent work. Through different types of aspects, you can measure, well, is it paying a living wage? Is the wage above, say, the national minimum wage? Are they specifically employing women, people from underserved communities, and things like that? So you can go a lot deeper. The other thing is I strongly encourage people to go in with a learning lens into your incubation and innovation programs, especially if it is a organization or a sector that you don't know a lot about. So, for example, when Andy funded these programs to help support women entrepreneurs, we found something interesting. We found that women entrepreneurs didn't necessarily get access to finance, but that was okay because they were getting training in financial management and financial literacy. And after they went through that training, they realized, oh, hey, I don't actually want to take on any debt now. I don't want any, equity investment. That's not the right place. That's not the right thing to pursue for our organization. So it seems that even though they weren't getting investments, they were able to make better and more well-informed financial decisions for their business after they got that financial education. So if we didn't go in with a learning mindset, then we would have never known that. And that's very interesting and highly impactful. So a good way to go in with a learning mindset is to have learning questions that you want to pursue, which can be something very simple, for example, how might we lower the barrier to investments for women entrepreneurs? Something like that. And then you kind of reflect on those questions after the program is concluded. Also, I highly recommend building in qualitative data collection into that program. So what I mean by that is taking time to do things like focus groups with your entrepreneurship cohort, or semi-structured interviews and things like that. That way you can really get at those unintended outcomes. If we did not do things like semi-structured interviews with our grantees, we would have kind of looked at the number of investments and thought, well, that's a failure. It's not, we're not seeing new investments or new uptake for this particular cohort. But as it turns out, it's actually not a bad thing to see that in this particular context. So strongly advise you guys to go in with a learning mindset and explore different aspects of the space that you do want to measure. And then finally, I would definitely recommend just kind of looking at how you might be able to support the entrepreneurship support organization itself. Frequently, a lot of those organizations are not, say, able to fund M&E and data collection, or they're not able to get funding to track impact, say, 3 years after acceleration, which is very, very valuable. So unfortunately, like measuring impact, it takes resources. You have to hire people like me. But thinking about actually building that capacity in the entrepreneur support organizations is a really, I think is also very important.
Yeah, I love what you're mentioning, because the first piece of advice is so relevant, and what you were saying, and just to kind of for people on the call to go back to what we were talking about with the theory of change, is Mallory was speaking in the language of theory of change. So, you know, in that example, it's like, if your impact plan is to break down the barriers for financial inclusion for women entrepreneurs, let's say, you know, going in with a learning mindset is really about building out that plan, but staying agile and making sure that you know, okay, we're going to make assumptions and assuming what outputs we need to create to get to these outcomes, but maybe we need to change those along the way. And then, you know, getting that qualitative data is exactly what we were talking about how are you going to measure? So, you know, how are you going to measure, and how are you going to verify all of your measurement along the way, so that you're actually validating and making sure that you're reaching your intended impact. So thank you so much, Mallory, for that example. Both were wonderful, and actually kind of perfectly alludes into what I wanted to speak to next. Those are unfortunately all the questions I had for you. I wish I had more. I know we are coming at time, so everyone's probably happy I don't have more, so they can go on with their day. But thank you, Mallory, so much. I'm going to move on and just quickly talk about Bridge for 2 minutes, because I think it is actually a great segue into what you were talking about kind of the fundamental issues that a lot of ESOs have in supporting entrepreneurs. And then I want to make sure we do have at least 5 minutes for questions from the group. So thanks, Mallory. I appreciate you being here and hang in there, because I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end that you'll be able to answer better than I can. So thanks. Perfect. So just moving on to Bridge for Billions really quickly before we open this up for more questions to either myself, to my team who's on the call, to Mallory, or even between other people on the call. Bridge for Billions, we are one of the, as Mallory was mentioning, we are considered an ESO, right? We're an entrepreneurship support organization. We are members of Andy. And what we do is we create and manage incubation programs around the world to support early stage entrepreneurs. We have a specific focus on inclusivity. What we want to do is support entrepreneurs that might not typically have access to high quality support, because we know and have identified time and time again that most entrepreneurs in this world don't come from the background where you have that perfect bridge to success. Your bridge might look like this, or it might look like this, but it's amazing to see the entrepreneurs with the least amount of resources somehow make it across, right? And we don't want it to be this challenging for them. We want them to get across with support, with mentorship, with access to information and knowledge and learning. So that's what we do. We're trying to close the gaps in the ecosystem. What Mallory was just saying is that so many ESOs, are underfunded, especially supporting the early stage entrepreneurs. You can't invest in them yet. You can't really charge them. So as an ESO, it's tough. It's tough to be viable. And that's why there is limited capacity on teams. They only exist in big cities that have high funding, and some incubation programs are just inaccessible because of an entry price that may exist. So Bridge for Billions does exactly this. We want to support entrepreneurs in their incubation stages, right? Where there's not a lot of existing support. Our theory of change, which I mentioned earlier, our impact idea, our goal is to really increase the number of entrepreneurs that come out of incubation, right? Because if we can be a solution to close this gap here that you see in the number of validated businesses that are ready for acceleration or to go to market, et cetera, then that would mean that we're reaching our goal, that there's more viable businesses in the world, especially, you know, from those entrepreneurs that don't typically get this type of support, to bring new types of innovation to the billions, to the world. So yeah, I thank you everyone for coming today at Bridge. You know, we're always open to have these conversations to talk about how we can increase, you know, our output metrics, our outcome metrics, and reach our impacts goal together with partners around the world. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and see if there's anyone that has any questions. You can write them in the chat. Or unmute yourself. I think we're a small enough group to where, you know, we can have a conversation in the 4 minutes that we have left. And then I'll also leave my personal email in the chat, Mallory, if you want to too, and that way people can contact us directly if they want. So yes, David, thanks for raising your hand. That's a good practice.
Yes, thank you, Andy and Mallory. I just have a question. If you have any thoughts about scaling, you know, we have in the US, you know, millions, and we focus here at the foundation at low income, 50 plus entrepreneurs. That's what I do. But any thoughts on how to really scale things up to get at more of the, you know, the hundreds of thousands of small, low income entrepreneurs looking to start, and any thoughts about how technology may play in that in the coming years?
Yes. So as with everything, the role of AI is going to play an increasingly more important role in our work, but especially for monitoring and evaluation and scaling up programs. So what some ESOs have started to do right now is use AI to facilitate more inclusive and targeted data collection. So they've been using AI. So this is specifically a organization called ONOW, ONOW, and they work out of Myanmar. So they are able to basically collect a lot of information from the entrepreneurs they support and use AI to kind of build different profiles in different groups. And then they use that, and then they use those profiles to be able to deliver targeted content. So very effective entrepreneur support is frequently pretty customized and detailed. That's hard to do at scale. It's pretty much impossible. But they're using AI to automate that collection, that data collection, and help them basically like create segments and profiles so they can offer more targeted and meaningful support. So we obviously don't know how AI is going to continue to evolve, but I can guarantee you that it will absolutely be playing a larger role even than it is now.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there, or even comments on David's question and Mallory's answer would be awesome. If not, I'm adding my email into the chat now in case anyone wants to further the conversation. I'd love to.
Yes, and I actually hear from Andy members, and I work with them one-on-one all the time, including ESOs and impact investors, and we discuss any challenges or questions they have with M&E. So I have heard quite a lot, and I always love to chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Cool. Perfect. Well, with that, thank you, Mallory, so much for being here today. I think it's always great to have other opinions, and with the plethora of information that you have. It was an honor to have you here today, and thank you for everyone that came. Thank you for your questions, your participation, and then those that are watching the recording, thank you as well. Yeah, really looking forward to continuing this conversation with the ecosystem, because it is important. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you,
Bye.
Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank
See you,
you.
everyone.